Hello and happy Saturday, everybody. Let's talk about masks. I cannot keep up with the orders for these things, so I've decided to share the digital pattern that I made that's printable, and I'm going to make a video showing you step by step in real time how to put these things together. So this is the design right here. There's a muslin outside and flannel on the inside. There's no wire here. And I have these elastic straps that if you just do a little knot, they're pretty adjustable because people really range a lot in size right here. Okay, so I'll put this on so you can see. I'm pretty happy with the design. I did iterate 7 times just to get this right, every angle, and I'm pretty happy with it. So let's get to making. So what do I have at my machine? I have the cutouts. It's easy to pick them up when they're laid out like this. And you'll see in some of the videos where I cut them, pin them, and then sort of feather them out like this to sit at the machine. I also have my bulk cut 7-inch elastic pieces, 4 per mask. I have, as always, my 1-inch by 6-inch ruler, some scissors, some tiny snips. Okay, so we're gonna do speed sewing. So you might see some new interesting ways of not snipping threads all the time and just kind of rolling through. So let's get started. Okay, so I am using an industrial sewing machine. This is my Juki 8700-7. It can do automatic, but I'm not doing that today because I'd rather have more control with this. And I do have an automatic back or a thumb back tack here, so I just push that and it back tacks. Very convenient. Okay, so I'm going to start with the liner and the shell. And let me just back out here so you can see pretty well. Okay. So I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm gonna start with a little back tack and then just roll through. And I'm not cutting anything. I'm just gonna run the liner right now under that. Okay. Okay, and then I'm just gonna pull them back. Open them up and seam allowance toward the right-hand side. So I'm going to move that over. This allows the mask and the center front seam to sit really nice and smooth over the face. Now I'm going to pull the material out, and I'm using my thumb to move the seam allowance to the right underneath. That allows for the smoothest transition, and I'm following this side of the foot with my eye to get a nice consistent line. A little back tack there, and again, I'm not cutting anything. Just going to open the liner up now with the seam allowance to the right. There we go. Do that nice top stitch. All right, time to snip. Bring it back. We're just going to cut these apart now. And I'm going to turn the liner face side to face side. And I'm going to line up, let's get focus here, the center seams together like that. Give it a little pin. Now I use the pin horizontally instead of vertically because so that's my kitten. So I found in the past that the material can go left or right. So vertical is a really nice way. Now I'm just gonna line up to the corner here because that's where I need to sew next. There we go, just walking it with my fingers a little bit. Okay. 1/4 inch again. All the seam allowances are the same on the operations here. Now just lining up. Okay. Now I see I'm off by a little bit here. That's probably because I was bulk cutting. I'll show you a little bit of that. In some of my previous videos, you can see I'm cutting these a ton at a time. And let's see who's visiting. Hey, Delilah, what's up? She's kind of sick of me sewing. I'm okay with that though, because I do play with her well enough. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is actually just give that a little bit of a trim. Now, Okay. Next, we're going to open these up, liner to the right, because the seam allowance is going to go to the right for another top stitch. This is the last top stitch. Oh, it's not actually. The last 2 steps are top stitches, but they're smaller. Okay. Still using my thumb to make sure the seam allowances is toward the right. Okay. Now I'm going to go right into the elastic. Now the elastic I prefer to put in 1/4 of an inch down, and I'm putting it on the shell side. It really doesn't matter which side it's on, but I find that the shell side just makes more sense. So I'm eyeballing this, but it is 1/4 of an inch down from the seam. If you put it right up here, it's going to get funky. And I found that out just by doing a couple like that. So it's roughly 2 inches apart here. Well, on my machine, I put a little Sharpie dot and I'm using this. This is roughly 2 inches. I also have another 2-inch mark up there. So feel free to mark your machine so you don't have to pick up the ruler over and over again. So I'm just going to sew all the way until this touches that 2-inch mark back here. And I can just pop this one right here and keep sewing. Okay, then I'm just going to spin this around and then right back up here. Eyeball that 1/4 inch. Okay. Now some of you may have noticed that I'm not going back here to lift my foot. This machine has an automatic foot lift. So really my foot is just operating the pedal and making this machine do my bidding, which is very fun and very convenient. Okay. So I've got all the straps set in now. So now it's time to close. So I'm just going to close everything up here. So that means lining up the center front seam at the bottom. Same way as we did at the top. Just gonna line them up there and drop a pin vertically. And then come back up here. Now because this is understitched, this is going to roll back toward the liner, and it should. Let's make sure these are all out of the way. No one wants to use one of these, right? Okay. So that is nice and flat right there. Gonna get that seam started. And then just smooth everything out as you go. Nice 1/4 inch seam allowance. Taking out the pin because we don't sew over pins ever. Okay. And then lining up again. And just pulling all of this forward to make sure that lines up pretty nice. Now we're not going to sew from here to here. This has to stay open because that's how we're going to turn it right side out. So I'm going to stop and just back tack over that second elastic. Now it's time to turn this right side out. I find the easiest way to do that is to pinch to open, use your thumb to push, and then just roll through. Once that pokes out, you can grab it and then pull. There you go. And then just sort of open and fluff it. You can use the elastic to pull the corners out. Open this up all the way. There you go. And then I usually sew the last 2 steps with the liner facing up because the shell is going to roll forward a little bit. Okay. So this is one of the last 2 top stitches. I'm just going to go from the elastic to the elastic. Let's bring you back over here. Nice, good back tacking. There we go. And I guess it's, you know, like between 1/8 and 1/4, not a 1/2 inch, that's too much. You want to get on the seam allowance to flatten that out. We're just going to roll around to the other side, and this is our hole. Now I'm not going to use an iron or anything. I'm just going to snip some thread maybe and flip this in roughly 1/4 of an inch. Again, with that liner folding back, or the shell folding back toward the liner because it is understitched there. 1/4 inch, 1/4 inch. Little fussy here, but no big deal. It's pretty nice when it finishes. Little back tack. A little more zhizhing, if you will. All right, that was the last step. Now you can just sort of fluff it out, push that liner in, make it nice and round. Okay, and add it to the pile. And there you go, that's construction